pine-covered mountains of La Plata County, Colorado, a quiet tragedy began unfolding in November 2012, one that would soon grip the entire nation. 13-year-old Dylan Redwine stepped off a plane at the Durango airport for a Thanksgiving visit he wanted no part of. A court-ordered trip to the home of his father, Mark Redwine, a man Dylan had grown increasingly afraid of. Their relationship had cracked a year earlier when Dylan and his older brother Corey accidentally stumbled upon a hidden folder on Mark's laptop. Inside were disturbing, humiliating photos of Mark wearing a blonde wig, women's lingerie, and engaging in obscene, degrading acts involving a soiled diaper. Images so grotesque and emotionally scarring that the boys never looked at their father the same way again. Dylan had been avoiding Mark ever since, but the court order forced him back into the very environment he feared. Just before leaving, Dylan quietly asked Corey to resend the photos, telling him he was finally ready to confront their father. That single decision may have sealed his fate. Surveillance footage shows Dylan and Mark at the airport, and then at a Walmart shortly after, and those images are haunting in retrospect. Dylan looking distant, tense, withdrawn, walking beside a father whose expression reveals nothing but cold detachment. There is no warmth, no ease, no trace of a normal parent-child relationship. It looks like two strangers forced together by circumstance. When they arrived at Mark's house, a small, isolated home buried in the shadows of dense forest, Dylan immediately asked to visit a friend. Mark refused. Instead, Dylan retreated into the safety of his phone, texting friends until 9:37 p.m. The messages were normal, filled with excitement to meet them early the next morning. It is chilling to realize those would be his final words to anyone. By morning, Dylan was gone, or so Mark claimed. According to him, he woke up around 7 a.m. to find his son missing, with no note, no struggle, no sign of foul play. He said Dylan must have just walked off. But what followed made investigators, and the public, deeply suspicious. Instead of frantically searching the area, calling neighbors, or racing to the police, Mark showed an unsettling calm, staying inside the house while the hours ticked by. He did not join search parties. He did not rush through the woods calling his son's name. Meanwhile, hundreds of volunteers, helicopters, K-9 units, and search teams combed the punishing terrain, battling snow, cliffs, and thick forest. Mark remained strangely distant. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The mountains gave nothing back, and hope slowly dimmed. The public watched Mark's behavior grow increasingly bizarre. His interviews stiff, defensive, and emotionless. His explanations changing. His refusal to acknowledge even basic concerns raising red flags. Dylan's mother, Elaine, desperate and devastated, led searches herself, calling out into the empty forests for a son she already sensed was gone. Then, 7 months after Dylan vanished, the wilderness finally revealed something. Searchers found scattered remains, shreds of clothing, small bones, deep in the backcountry of Middle Mountain, 8 miles from Mark's house, in an area so rugged and remote that even seasoned hikers avoided it. Investigators immediately noticed the location: steep slopes, thick brush, isolated ridges. Dylan, unfamiliar with the terrain, could never have reached this spot alone. Someone put him there. But the story grew even darker. In 2015, 2 years after the first discovery, Dylan's skull was found farther up the mountain, separated from the rest of his remains. Forensic experts determined that the fractures on his skull were consistent with blunt force trauma, an injury no animal could have caused. Meanwhile, cadaver dogs alerted to the presence of decomposition in the bed of Mark's truck. and investigators found tiny traces of Dylan's blood inside Mark's living room in multiple locations, on the couch, on the floor, and even on a table leg. The evidence was subtle but impossible to ignore. Police built their theory. On the night Dylan disappeared, a confrontation happened inside the house. Mark, cornered about the disturbing photos and unable to handle the truth coming from his own son, snapped. Something violent occurred, and in the dark hours of the early morning, Mark Redwine carried Dylan's body into the mountains, into the wilderness he knew, a place where he believed nature would hide the truth forever. The case dragged on for years. Mark remained free, giving interviews filled with denial and blame. He pointed to animals, to Dylan's friends, to imaginary theories, anything but himself. But the evidence only tightened around him. In 2017, 5 long years after Dylan vanished, Mark Redwine was finally arrested and charged with second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death. The trial, delayed repeatedly, did not begin until 2021, but when it did, the world watched. Mark sat emotionless as prosecutors revealed the photos, the blood evidence, the mountain remains, and the timeline that left no room for innocence. Witness after witness painted a portrait of a father who cared more about protecting his secrets than protecting his son. After just hours of deliberation, the jury delivered the verdict, guilty on all counts. Mark Redwine was sentenced to 48 years in prison, the maximum allowed, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life haunted by the truth he tried to bury. And yet, for Dylan's family, justice can never replace what was taken. The mountains of Colorado still hold the echoes of that final night. Dylan's last texts, the silent confrontation, and the fatal moment that turned a holiday visit into a tragedy that will be remembered forever.